How
Yeah.
can we test ourselves for cancer prevention, especially if there is a strong family history?
When was this stem cell donation discovered that it could help?
To answer your question, initially this was known as bone marrow transplant, and it was being done since the 1960s in abroad, US and UK. It came to India in 1983, where you might have heard of one of the best doctors, Dr. Suresh Advani, who did the first bone marrow transplant at Tata Memorial Hospital. And since then it has been progressing. In about 1997, we started this non-invasive way of donating stem cells, where it is just a needle procedure, just like a blood donation. So to answer your question, 1997, we started actually donating stem cells just through the needle procedure.
Then you were talking about Aryan race and all. There is so much happening in the social media that India doesn't have Aryan race, and then you're talking about the Aryan race and that Germans and we are, our races are close to each other. So I was a little confused with so much of conversation happening across.
Yes, there is a link probably about 6 centuries if you go back. There is a link between the Germans and the Indians, just going by the race point of view, the Aryan race. Because through our genetic study, we have found out that because the DNA, there are some characters which will tell us that what kind of race this person belongs, although he might have no idea where he's originating from. So we did find this link between the German registry and the Indians, the German population and the Indian population, that there is a link in certain points of the DNA, not the whole DNA, in certain points, because as the centuries go by, there is a dilution of the DNA, because of intercaste, marriages and migration. So that's how we had to date back many centuries to find out the answer. Of course, we don't have a complete answer to this because we don't want to get too much into the racial background of anyone, because we are trying to get out of racism actually. Probably this is the only place where we tend to study the race of the donor, and that's why our study point of view is very limited, and we keep it low.
Are there any studies or books with respect to race and genes?
And nothing that I know of as of now, not from the medical point of view, but there is one book, I forgot the name, I don't remember the name, but I can share it later, by a UK author who has done a study of voluntary donors, blood donors, stem cell donors and organ donors, with the permission from them that can I do a racial profiling of your blood, and with a few family members also, to date back to see if they are related with the patient. And they came with some conclusive evidence that when a match is found, somewhere down the centuries they might be related. So that's the thing. I'll let you know the name of the book. It is not a medical book. It's more of an informative documentary.
There is one question from Ms. Sabitha. Are there any precautions to be followed by the donor during the 5-day stimulation period?
Yeah. So the injection given to the donor is a growth factor. Okay, it's not a growth hormone. Okay, growth factor means it's just a stimulant. It's a very body-friendly injection, and it is only going to stimulate your bone marrow for a certain time, say about 10 to 12 hours. So it is going to, increase your stem cells, overflow it into your blood, and then the effect is gone. So it has a very short life. So we have to give it every day. So that is one thing. Precaution wise, the donor will not have to do anything special. Okay, he continues with his work and all. That's why the donor need not come to the hospital also or the blood bank to take the injection. I go to the donor's home and give it to him at his home, sit with him, have a cup of tea, and then the donor goes to his work also. So no special care or diet or anything. Only thing, he should not do any special sports activities like huge adventure activities during that time, because he should not get injured during those protocols, because those 5 days are very delicate period for the patient, because he is a match, and if something happens to the donor on the third day or something, because simultaneously we have started conditioning the patient, simultaneously we have started destroying the patient's bone marrow also in those 5 days. So donor and the patient are being prepared simultaneously, so that day 0, donor donates, patient is at 0 cells, and the infusion takes place. Otherwise, no special care for the donor as such.
There's one question from Ms. Uma. Are there camps being held in, I'm adding to it, in Hyderabad or Bangalore, where we can ask people to donate?
Yeah. So MDRI as a registry is functional only in Mumbai. Okay. But we are connected with other registries around India, and there are 2-3 more registries in India. Usually the south is managed, as you said, Bangalore and Hyderabad is managed by 2 other registries. One is a very well-known registry called Datri, and the other well-known one is DKMS BMST. Okay, that is in Bangalore. Datri is in Chennai, and DKMS BMST is in Bangalore. So they have their website. Yeah.
Hyderabad?
Hyderabad, there is no registry as such, but they can definitely
possibility
put
that
there.
Vishwa can coordinate with y'all or anybody to start a registry, or to collaborate with the hospital to start a registry?
Yeah, so the DKMS registry in Bangalore and Datri, of course, in Chennai, they hold online sessions for the awareness session, and they send the swab kit to the donor's home. So they just take a swab and put it in an envelope and post it. It's very simple. They don't have to do much. We have just started swab, so we are not doing the postal part yet. That's why we do live camps, and that also only in Mumbai. We are planning to expand in other parts of the country, but since there are already registries in the south, we don't venture there.
Because you said there are only 50,000 donors as of now in India.
Yes, yeah,
and we can really support you in building that up to at least 1 lakh or so.
Yeah, there is one catch to this also. This whole project is kind of a cost involved project. Each donor we register costs 5,000 rupees. So if you can imagine, if you go to a college, there is definitely 100 donor registration takes place. So in one shot 5 lakhs, you have to be ready with it. This is the best.
Collaborate with you. For Andhra and Telangana, if you want to do any collaboration, Vishwa is ready to collaborate with you.
Wonderful. Definitely.
Another question out here. Many myths are broke down today. Please elaborate on the change on blood group in the receiver mentioned in the presentation.
Yeah. So blood group wise, patient and donor might have different blood groups. We just have to know which blood groups they are, and what happens is our blood group is formed in our bone marrow. So what happens when the donor donates, he is of say O group, and we have a stem cell product of O group. The patient is say something out of this AB blood group. What happens is we destroy the patient's bone marrow completely, to such an extent that there is nothing left behind in his bone marrow. The faulty cells, but at the same time we destroy his good cells also. But we take care of it. He is kept in a special isolated chamber where he is taken good care. So what has happened is the patient's blood group is completely destroyed. He does not have anything left of his primary blood group. Now the donor cells is having good blood group system in his stem cells. That when it goes to the patient, it is going to replace all his bone marrow with the patient's donor's cells. So finally what will happen? Since the primary blood group has been destroyed, the patient will have to develop the donor's blood group only. So that is how the blood group of the patient changes to the donor's blood.
You said there were around 18,000 donations that have taken place till now.
18, not
18,000.
18,000.
Yes.
No, 18. Only 18.
Only 18 out of
Yeah.
the 50,000 who've registered.
Yes. Yeah. See, that is the
And-
probability of finding a match. That is the probability. Of course, we have bigger registries. Datri in the south has a bigger registry. They have about 5 lakh donors where they have facilitated 400 transplants.
They've done
So
400.
Yeah, so this is the statistics, more the registry pool, bigger the transplants that can take place.
And how many, out of these 18, how many were successful?
All of them.
All of them. And in Datri?
Yeah. They have not shared the data, but definitely I can vouch at least 80 to 90% have been successful because their number is larger. Yeah.
When the
Yeah.
general...
Because what happens is, a transplant is a very, delicate procedure to be handled by many people at the same time. And the donor is always at a threat of a rejection. The patient. What is being given to him, suddenly his immune system will start developing and throw out whatever has been given. It's called graft versus host disease. So that is something which we have to take care of all the time for the next 2 years after the transplant for the patient. It's not dependent on the doctor, but it is dependent on the patient's immunity, which is trying to develop as soon as possible. It's like we have destroyed it, but it will come back. So that is the only reason where a transplant might fail.
Yeah. Now, I think this is a question you've already answered, but I'll repeat what Mr. Sai Kiran has requested. What is the difference between bone marrow donation in past days and now?
Yeah, in past days, bone marrow donation was the only option, first of all. Now, this peripheral, PBSC we call it, peripheral blood stem cell collection. Now we can do it through the vein, where it is as simple as a blood donation. And now we don't call it even bone marrow donation because, it's a scary term to even say it. So, very orthodox procedure. Of course, very few cases we still do a bone marrow transplant, where like in the case of thalassemia and the donor is the sibling, the best option is a bone marrow donation. So we still opt for a bone marrow donation from the sibling, of course with consent taken from the parents. But if you want to know the difference between the 30-year-old bone marrow and now, the needles are smaller, the anesthesia is shorter, and the patient is taken as an outdoor patient. They need not be admitted in the hospital. After the procedure is over, they can be sent home. Previous bone marrow donations, the patient was admitted. The donor is actually a patient, and he is admitted for 2 days in the hospital, just for observation, of course. But now it is an outdoor procedure.
How can we test ourselves for cancer prevention, especially if there is a strong family history?
Yeah, so if there is a strong family tendency, that means that through the generations, there has always been a cancer in the family. So, although there is no hardcore evidence that cancer is absolutely familial, yes, there are some cancers which is familial, but depending on what type of cancer or which organ of the body has been affected with that type of cancer, it would be advisable that the younger generation gets themselves screened for that particular organ through a specialized MD physician. Say in my case, treating blood cancers, my suggestion is that get a CBC done on a regular basis. Say if you're in the age group of say 25 to 30, a CBC once a year is fair enough. And get the report analyzed by a specialist rather than a regular doctor to know if there is anything, any value in the blood parameters out of the normal. So we can comment on that and tell you to proceed for further investigations. 99% of the time it is just a normal variation, but if there is something, we can point it out and let you know. So if there is a strong familial indication, because that's a very broad field, because cancers are there in all parts of our body. So depending on what type of cancer, we can guide you what has to be done.
Question from G. Narahari Datta. What will be the cost involved in bone marrow transplantation?
Yes, so the cost, currently bone marrow transplant is a highly specialized procedure and done in very few hospitals all over the country. Although all these procedures are not, specific for the doctor or the hospital, the procedure itself is a costly affair. It can range from anywhere between 15 lakhs to almost 80 lakhs, depending on which hospital is doing the transplant. But at the same time, there are organizations which can fund, like yours, fund the project with a crowdfunding. Where we have, approached a certain hospital, coming from Tata Memorial Hospital. There are many organizations just outside the hospital premises where they help in crowdfunding, or whatever funds they have, they help them out. Yes, government hospitals do it at a much lesser cost. So probably, but to answer your question, still 15 to 20 lakhs would be a cost to do a bone marrow transplant, minimum.